Welcome back to the Larson Show. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm glad to get to your calls. We'll do that a bit later at 866-HEY-LARS. That's 866-439-5277. Emails go to talk@larslarson.com. I heard something Monday evening. My wife and I were on a longish car drive, a couple of hours, and she was looking at the news. She keeps an eye on the news as well, and she likes to share things with me. And she said, Lars, do you realize they're keeping an eye on people for Ebola who were caught crossing the border from Mexico into the United States? And I said, where would they get Ebola? And she said, they are Congolese. And I said, Congolese people from the Congo? Okay, and they were crossing from Mexico into the United States? I don't have a world map in front of me, but my recollection is that wouldn't be the usual path into the United States, but somehow there were 20 of them. And apparently the folks at CDC were keeping an eye on them. I thought about that when I planned to have Dale Wilcox on, who's the executive director of the Immigration Reform Law Institute. Dale, welcome back to the program, by the way.
Well, thanks for having me, Lars.
So when people assume that most of the folks who are coming in across the border at Mexico and the southern states of the United States, and they think, well, they're from Mexico or Guatemala or Honduras or El Salvador or other places in Central or South America, we're seeing an awful lot of people cross that border who are not from this part of the world at all, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. CBP, Customs and Border Protection, has documented that they've encountered people from 50 different countries all over the world, more than 50 countries. And I've seen personally, I've been down there to the border, and I've seen some of the literature left behind and some of the trash left behind, and there has been script from languages from the Middle East, from all parts of Asia. So, no, it's just not Latin Americans coming across the border. You've got individuals from all over the world, and sadly, you've got people who really want to do us harm coming across the border. Hezbollah has outposts in Latin America. We have potential terrorists attempting to get into this country all the time.
Including some of the official state sponsors of terrorism, Iran, North Korea, Syria, and Sudan. They're coming in as well?
Yes, they are. And in fact, a recent investigation, we uncovered documents that show there are more than 10,000 illegal aliens in this country right now from countries that have been designated as state sponsors of terrorism, the countries you just mentioned. And they've been ordered deported, but they're still here living probably in sanctuary cities, which is another reason why sanctuary cities are a threat to our national security.
So somebody comes from North Korea. How do they make their way into the United States? They're not coming in on a tourist visa. I'm reasonably sure we don't give tourist visas to North Korea. So do we know anything about the pathway that they take to get in?
Well, we don't know everything about the 10,000, but if you're North Korean, yeah, you're not going to get a visa. So chances are they are jumping our porous southern border. And that's not hard to do. Last month alone, the month of March, Customs and Border Protection, Border Patrol, apprehended 103,000 people crossing our border.
Yep.
Now, Border Patrol has always told us they only catch 1 in 4. That's always been their estimate. We only catch 1 in 4. So think about that. They apprehended 103. So what scares me are the potential 300,000 that got through last month. And we're talking about people such as North Koreans, Iranians, Syrians, and people from the Sudan. Not all people from that region are bad, but obviously 10,000 of them have received an order of deportation. That means they've been through the system. An immigration judge has said, you're not allowed to be here. You've either committed a crime, we're sending you back home, you've overstayed your visa, or you've jumped the border. So these people are roaming about freely, especially in sanctuary cities, who will not notify the feds when they come across these people.
Okay, so is there a problem with deporting them? Because we have this North Korean, we want to send him back, but since we don't have full relations with North Korea, are we able to send him back if North Korea says we don't want him?
Well, you're right. Some countries in the past have said we don't want our criminals, our nationals back. We don't need that kind of hassle. Now, there is a provision in our federal immigration law that allows the government to say, if you will not take back your nationals, we will cut off visas for everyone in your country, including diplomats and the leaders' wives who want to come over and shop or whatnot. And that usually gets their attention. And actually, the Trump administration has threatened to use that provision several times, and these recalcitrant countries have backed off, and they've actually taken their nationals back.
Well, that's even China. Do you remember the Uyghurs that were here, and we wanted to ship them back to China, and China said, we don't want them? My recollection is that China finally took them back, and then they dealt with them on their soil instead of our soil.
Right, and that's what needs to happen. American lives are put at risk. If you remember the 19 hijackers on 9/11, most of them were illegal aliens. They had come here on student visas or whatnot, but they had fallen out of status. And at least 4 of them had encountered state and local police for one reason or another, speeding or something. Now, if the local police had been working with the feds in those jurisdictions, 9/11 might not have occurred as it did. So this just stresses once again how dangerous sanctuary cities are.
You know what I'm hoping, Dale, is that organizations like yours or Numbers or FAIR or any of those organizations, I wish as we head into this campaign season, I know that they can't perhaps get involved directly in political activities because of their nonprofit status. But I think it'd be useful if we armed both candidates and voters with some information and said, look, this is what's happening. I had there was a sheriff's deputy who was shot not far from where my studios are on the West Coast, and he was killed by an illegal alien. We've had a woman in Seattle who was raped by an illegal alien who went out and pretended to be an Uber driver. He was not an Uber driver, and he managed to coax her into his car, and then he assaulted her. So if you start bringing these up and say the reason these people who've had contact with law enforcement are able to get away with it is that your leaders, your so-called leaders, have said we're not going to enforce the law because we're maintaining our sanctuary status. It's coming at the cost of American lives and assaults on Americans like that. It's truly ugly.
It is, and that's why radio shows like yours is so important. My organization, the Immigration Reform Law Institute, is a 501c3. We don't get involved in politics. We can't get involved in politics. Our issue is immigration and, what's in the best interest of Americans. So we uncover this stuff, and we really appreciate radio hosts and shows like yours that takes this information and educates the American people as to what's going on, because they're certainly not going to hear about this in the mainstream media.
Well, what's funny, it just seems odd, Dale. The media will go crazy over something like the Takata airbag recall. And you say, well, why? Well, because people have been hurt and killed by it. Great. I mean, that's terrible. We should go after it. What about the other things that are hurting and killing Americans? Well, diseases like measles can do that, or other diseases. So we'll warn you about that. How about warning folks about the problems that illegal aliens cause? All of a sudden, a lot of newsrooms in America say, no, we don't want anything to do with that. We don't like the political implications of it. Dale, keep up the good work at the Immigration Reform Law Institute, and we appreciate the data. 10,000 illegal aliens living in the United States, ordered deported, and they are from Iran, North Korea, Syria, and Sudan. You've got the Lars Larson Show.